Glam was an influential and popular form of rock in the early 70s and is one of my favorite genres. I first heard glam when I discovered Queen. I was a contrarian preteen who thought the intricate harmonies and occasionally weird lyrics were way more awesome than your average early 2010s pop. One of my favorite artists was David Bowie. The more I learned about him, the more interested I became. He was a seminal figure in the inception of glam and had a quintessentially glam story. Exploring Bowie's life elucidates the development and characteristics of glam, which were important in the development of other genres and artists. David Bowie was born in 1947.
Did you know this? That your name was David Robert Jones, but that Davy Jones of the Monkees claimed the name, and you became David Bowie.
Growing up in the 50s, he enjoyed rock and roll and playing music.
Yeah, I used to play tenor sax a long time ago at school, and I used to play with a modern jazz band very badly. And I got into the Little Richard thing about the big sax lineups he used to have, and it was just a fun thing to do, so I started playing that. And then I developed an interest in writing songs.
In the 60s, he joined a rock band called the Conrads and was part of the mod scene, a subculture whose members often wore suits and were interested in soul, R&B, and jazz. At age 17, Bowie was already using fashion to develop a stage persona in a quest for fame. He began gender bending by growing out his hair, which led to him getting banned from the BBC pop show Gadzooks, It's All Happening. He invented the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Long-Haired Men as a publicity stunt and was interviewed on the BBC show Tonight.
Did you get this off the Rolling Stones, really?
Oh, no, definitely not.
But did any of you have your hair growing long more than 2 years ago,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Did you? Before the Rolling Stones ever did?
Bowie initially struggled to break into the underground music scene. His music at the time was primarily 60s folk rock. His luck changed in 1969 with the wild success of Space Oddity. The 60s tune was inspired by 2001 A Space Odyssey and capitalized on NASA missions.
This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. Now it's time to leave the capsule if you dare.
The distorted orchestra mimics the takeoff of Major Tom's rocket and fits with the late 60s genre of acid rock. The heavy use of acoustic or acoustic-sounding guitar also mimics folky 60s rock. The space theme was also popular in 1969, catapulting the song to success. While Bowie did appreciate the acknowledgement, he was unhappy with the poor reception of the overall album. He did not want to be known as a one-hit wonder. Later that same year, Bowie dismissed Space Oddity as only a pop song, after all, that served its purpose. Bowie soon became disillusioned with the rock genre. He said, "The whole revolution bit drives me mad. These people, they're so apathetic, so lethargic. The laziest people I've met in my life. They don't know what to do with themselves, looking all the time for people to show them the way. They wear anything they're told and listen to any music they're told to." After a break, Bowie performed with his band, The Hype, at the Atomic Sunrise Festival in 1970. The Hype began Bowie's career in characters. His stage persona was Space Star. Mark Bolan of T-Rex, credited with inventing glam, attended the festival and may have been inspired by Bowie's performance. Unfortunately for Bowie, The Hype soon ditched him. Alone, Bowie recorded and released The Man Who Sold the World, a non-committal use of acid and folk rock, but which also featured elements of hard rock. The song Black Country Rock is an interesting one that previewed Bowie's adoption of glam.
Some say the view is crazy, but you may adopt another point of view. So if it's much too hazy, you can leave my friend and me with fondue.
The song shows Bowie's interest with Bolan and his mimicry of Bolan's singing style, particularly the vibrato. Bolan's influence likely impacted Bowie's future interest in glam. While the sound of the album was not very glam, the album cover showed Bowie's gender play. It featured Bowie reclining on a chaise lounge in a silky flower print dress with an open chest, brown boots, and long curled hair. The presentation is reminiscent of Renaissance paintings of relaxing women, suggesting Bowie's future willingness to dress androgynously. Soon after this, Bowie paired up with Tony DeFries. DeFries helped Bowie get out of previous arrangements, even buying back the rights to Bowie's old music. While working with DeFries, Bowie released Hunky Dory in 1971.
Oh yeah, I'm up on the 11th floor and I'm watching the cruisers below. Down on the street and try hard to boost the flow. Oh, my heart's in the basement, my weekends at an all-time low. Cause she's hoping to score, so I can't see her letting him go.
Hunky Dory's sound was brighter and more upbeat without much of the rock sound for Man Who Sold the World, despite the similarly dark lyrics. Queen Bitch refers to someone propositioning a transgender woman for sex. The riff of the song is reminiscent of Eddie Cochran's 3 Steps to Heaven. In Changes, Bowie calls out you rock and rollers who spit on children as they try to change the world, telling them to turn and face the strange, perhaps referencing Bowie's continuing androgyny. On Hunky Dory's cover, Bowie is dressed in a blouse and pushed back yellow-colored hair in a pose inspired by classic film actresses like Greta Garbo. Following the release of Hunky Dory, DeFries asked Bowie to sign with RCA in New York, and they worked together to remake Bowie after the general public had forgotten about Space Oddity. He cut his hair into a mullet and dyed it bright orange and took to wearing makeup in performances. In early 1972, Bowie publicly came out as gay. Whether or not his goal at the time was publicity for his next album, his bisexuality informed many of his creations. He was inspired by gay subculture's extravagance, appreciating the new frontier that camp provided to his performance. Bowie's next album would be incredibly influential.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the Spiders from Mars. He played it left hand, but made it too far. Became the special man, then we were Ziggy's band.
Sung from multiple perspectives, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars tells the story of an androgynous bisexual rock star from outer space who has come to Earth to save it from the impending apocalypse. Ziggy Stardust served notice and call time on the 60s and celebrated a tawdry school of 70s rock pretensions. The song later details Ziggy's fall as his bands and fans no longer like his growing ego. In Star, Bowie explicitly has Ziggy consider playing the part of a rock star rather than just being a star.
So inviting, so enticing to play the part. I can play the wild mutation and the rock and roll star.
The album relies heavily on guitar, both acoustic and electric. Despite Bowie's US tour, Ziggy Stardust was less popular there, particularly in Middle America. However, Bowie's Gene Genie, a 60s throwback written during his tour, charted in the US.
Small Gene Genie snuck off to the city, strung out on lasers and slashback blazers, and ate all your razors while pulling the waiters, talking about Monroe and walking on Snow White. New York's a go-go and everything tastes nice. Poor little greenie.
The song is heavily inspired by America and R&B, featuring a strong bass line and prominent harmonica. The harmonica is also a reference to the Rolling Stones. In 1973, Bowie released a darker album, Aladdin Sane. The sound was fiercer and had more bite.
The films that I made, forget that I'm 50 'cause you just got paid. Crack, baby, crack, show me your real. Smack, baby, smack is all that you feel. Suck, baby, suck, give me your hand before you stop professing that you're nothing dead.
Bowie called it Ziggy in America and was inspired by the loneliness and lack of security in the US. The lyrics were more explicit and grittier, with cracked actor depicting the rendezvous of a Hollywood star and prostitute with references to cocaine. The sound was also inspired by the Rolling Stones, with whom Bowie had a friendly rivalry. In the same year, at the end of his Aladdin Sane Ziggy Stardust tour, Bowie said,
Of all the shows on this tour, this particular show will remain with us the longest, because not only is it the last show of the tour, but it's the last show that we'll ever do. Thank you.
he was killing off Ziggy Stardust in an act of rock and roll suicide. Bowie would later state, Ziggy really said as much as I meant to say all along. 1973 also held the release of Pin-Ups, an album of covers of rock songs. One song Bowie covered was Rosalind. served as almost an appropriation of non-glam songs into glam with Bowie's distinct voice. The drums are louder and the guitars are cleaner in Bowie's version, a benefit of glam's production techniques. Pinups reconnected Bowie to Britain after having projects based in the US. The cover features Twiggy, a famous British 60s model. Bowie's albums were not received incredibly well by some critics who were suspicious about Bowie's dislike of rock and felt that Bowie had too much prestige. One critic felt that Bowie's creativity lies in the outrageous juxtapositioning. Bowie felt similarly, saying,
I've always found that I collect. I'm a collector. And I've always just seemed to collect personalities, ideas.
Bowie's next album was Diamond Dogs. The album was created after a failed stage production of 1984, which inspired the apocalyptic imagery of the music. The lyrics were bleak and some songs utilized electronic effects.
Got your mother in a whirl. She's not sure if you're a boy or a girl. Hey babe, your hair's alright. Hey babe, let's go out tonight.
The lyrics of Rebel Rebel are similar to other Bowie songs and in a way said goodbye to glam. He sings like a tramp whose mother is not sure if you're a boy or a girl. The song continues Bowie's interest in the Rolling Stones, with the riff evoking satisfaction. The album became popular in the US and in the UK. The tour had an elaborate set design. Bowie even had himself in a cherry picker floating above the audience. With Diamond Dogs, Bowie's career in glam ended. Bowie's early life demonstrates the background to glam rock. The Queen song Modern Times Rock and Roll explains glam's relation to the past.
Have to make do with the woman I rock and roll scene. The old pop's getting tired, need a rest, but you know what I mean. 58, that was good, but it's over now, that's all. Something hard is coming up, and I really not hold the wall.
Glam was particularly influenced by 50s rock and roll. It was feel-good, energetic music that was immediately endearing to its listeners. Even better, 50s artists knew how to work the stage. As rock and roll evolved into rock of the 60s, performances became simpler. For 60s rock artists, music was paramount and the presentation took a backseat. The music was more folksy, but also featured production advancements. For example, drums became a more important and loud part of the mix. The shift in performance style was also mimicked by a change in mentality. Rock was authentic. They talked authentically about politics and were themselves. The then newly defined concept of public image was deeply disliked by the 60s citizenry who sought natural and genuine people. In the early 70s, when glam was developing, the Conservative Party gained power in the UK. Unemployment fluctuated year to year, and there were major strikes, an oil crisis, and massive inflation. The post-war consensus and British dream life was crumbling. Classlessness, which was important to many glam stars' upbringing, was no longer a reality. The average middle-class British citizen was not affluent. The confluence of history and current events created the environment for glam. Certainly, glam was about makeup, mirrors, and androgyny. It was narcissistic, obsessive, decadent, and subversive. It was bohemian, but also strangely futuristic. It was Oscar Wilde meets A Clockwork Orange. It was a mutant bastard offspring of glitter. But while glitter was a sparkling distraction, glam was anarchy and drag. It was sexy, glamorous, on edge. It was the moment hippie finally died. It was absolutely rock and roll, but it was also fashion, art, theater, lifestyle. It was gay, straight, multisexual. It was totally titillating and absolutely naughty. Glam was a musical movement that existed from about 1972 to 1975. It began with T-Rex, fronted by Mark Bolan, who dominated the charts in the early 70s. The movement was a group of artists which had interesting and specific hallmarks that differentiated it from ancestors and contemporaries. Glam was both radical and reactionary. It was
a revolution against the denim look of the whole 60s, late 60s and early 70s period.
Rather than just focusing on the music, glam sought to put on a show inspired by 50s rock and roll. Glam fought against the communal hippies of the 60s. They wanted to create a personal escape in stardom and luxury instead of providing large-scale solutions. Instead of trying to change the world, glam built a new one to escape to. To do this, they dropped the sincerity and uncampness of 60s rock and created images and personas. The radical shift in music was not commercialization, but was instead using music as a site of interaction between fantasy and reality. Particularly important in this was the questioning of gender roles using fashion. Ambiguity was popular, and the early 60s amplified some of the pre-existing androgynous and homoerotic elements of entertainment as new avenues of deviance and extravagance. Glam rock was also concerned with the recognition of a loss of consensus and an attempt at a self-consciously fantastic recuperation of that consensus, whilst at the same time acting through a problematization of the changing conditions of existence for the heterosexual male in the early 1970s. Artists questioned assumptions that biology prescribed a set of roles and a way of socialization. This was especially done using femininity, like dresses, longer hair, and makeup, which all came together to form a feeling of costume rather than a feeling of natural beauty. Glam embraced camp as, using Susan Sontag's words, the metaphor of life as theater. This was especially due to the influence from the gay subculture.
I think a lot of the gay clubs at that particular time were the only places that were playing music that was really worthwhile listening to. All the dances and the theatrics and the flamboyances. And I think I probably got a lot of my formative musical ideas from that particular culture.
Bowie was not wrong when he said, "People look to me to see what the spirit of the 70s is." As shown in BBC's documentary Cracked Actor, Bowie returned to the music of his youth. Bowie's next albums, beginning with Young Americans, would turn in an R&B direction. A redo of John I'm Only Dancing, recorded in 1974, bore little resemblance to the original, but was far more electronic heavy, previewing the rise of disco.
Dancing, I'm having so much love.
Bowie was a widely influential figure to many artists. Bowie helped Iggy Pop and Lou Reed's careers, beginning in 1972 when he introduced them in a press meeting. He also produced Transformer, Lou Reed's second solo album. BBC DJ Mark Riley called Bowie's 1972 Top of the Pops performance of Starman a pivotal moment for a lot of people. Noel Gallagher of Oasis said of the show, "When I saw Bowie on Top of the Pops, I thought he came from Mars. I was disappointed when I found out he was called Jones and came from Battersea." The rock band Simple Minds, known for the song Don't You Forget About Me from The Breakfast Club, took their name from the Gene Genie lyric, "He's so simple-minded he can't drive his module." The Man You Sold the World was famously covered during a session of MTV Unplugged by Kurt Cobain. Queen Bitch influenced the popular early 2000s song Mr. Brightside by the alt-rock band The Killers.
Now she's leading them on, and she'll lay him right down. Yes, she's leading them on, and she'll lay him right down. Coming out of my cage, and I've been doing just fine. Gotta be down because I want it all.
In 1974, Bolan declared that Glam was dead. This declaration was a little premature. Queen and other similar bands would start a second wave. Queen's early work was maximalist and rococo inspired, with complicated harmonies and instrumentation. Their presentation was campy and glam. Eventually, glam did end. Bowie, Queen, and other bands that gained their exposure due to glam moved on to rock. Glam metal from artists like Alice Cooper and Kiss would greatly influence metal as a whole. Importantly, glam also influenced punk. Glam rock could be said to have laid the foundation for punk in many ways, including its embrace of what, in retrospect, can be interpreted as distinctly postmodern aesthetic. Mark Maroney of Susie and the Banshees cited Bowie as the first music that affected him, and many other punk artists pointed to glam as inspiration. Bowie's trajectory mirrors that of glam rock. His evolution in the 1970s shows how glam originated, rose to prominence, and then influenced other genres as it ended. Bowie was an influential figure both in and outside of glam. His music as a whole, and particularly his contribution to glam, left a mark on the music scene for decades to come. If you all liked any of the music that I discussed, I definitely recommend listening to Bowie.